Hey everyone, Nick Espinosa, your chief security fanatic here, and it is Sunday, so we are doing breaches of the week. And as always, before I begin, I'd like to thank the following people that tagged me, linked me, gave me a shout out, whatever it was, and that would be Tamara Groff, Jason Dance, and David Walker. Guys, thank you so much. It's always appreciated. And if you have a tip for me, please send it my way because these breaches just seem to get worse and worse every week. This week is no exception, and let's dive right in and start with the state of Hawaii because they are investigating a potential breach of data within one of their systems tied to their Attorney General's office. Now, nearly 150 individuals who applied for a travel exemption through the state's Attorney General's website were notified this past Friday about a potential breach. Now, this impacts applicants between September 18th and September 21st of this year. In an email notice, officials say that during that time, the system could have been exploited to allow users to access the personal information of other applicants. The information is believed to have exposed names, phone numbers, and copies of state IDs. It is unclear, however, if any information was in fact compromised, but the system has been reportedly fixed. So heads up if you're in Hawaii and needed a travel exemption from the Attorney General. Moving on, let's head on down to Georgia because we're going to be talking about the Georgia Department of Human Services, or DHS. Information for children and parents was accessed by attackers over the summer, and this is basically according to the DHS of Georgia that, again, this past Friday. The security breach took place over the spring, and Georgia DHS officials said that between May 3rd and May 15th of 2020, attackers managed to gain access to several employee email accounts. Over the summer, officials said they learned about the intruders, or that the intruders rather had, and I quote, been able to retain emails from the hacked accounts. Now, we are talking about full name of children and household members, relationship to the child receiving services, county of residence, DFCS case number, DFCS identification numbers, date of birth, age, number of times contacted by DFCS, an identifier of whether face-to-face contact was medically appropriate, phone numbers, email addresses, security numbers, Medicaid identification numbers, Medicaid medical insurance identification numbers, medical provider names, and appointment dates were all hit. So heads up if you have anything to do with the DHS in the state of Georgia. Moving on, I want to give you a quick Blackbot update. As you recall, over the last few months or so, once a week I've been doing this, of the organizations that got caught up in the Blackbot data breach, and that's a lot of hospitals and charities and schools and all of that. And so this week it's Greenwich Hospital of Connecticut, St. Vincent's Medical Center in Bridgeport, which also I believe is in Connecticut, Trinity Health New England, and Sisters of Charity Health System. So if you have anything to do with those, you might want to check in. Moving on, let's talk about Asian food delivery app Chow Bus. Now, they emailed customer data, including home addresses and phone numbers, to some of their users after a breach this past Monday. An email address registered with the company sent a link to files containing details about 4,300 restaurants, as well as information about hundreds of thousands of customers. Screenshots posted to Reddit essentially confirm this. Now, the files sent this past Monday appear to include names, postal addresses, phone numbers, and more than 400,000 email addresses. And again, this is according to both Reddit as well as verified by Have I Been Pwned. So heads up to you if you use the Asian food delivery app Chow Bus. Moving on, let's talk about the massive retail giant H&M because they've been fined 35 million euros, which is 41.1 million US, after monitoring, quote unquote, several hundred employees, including recording extensive information about their family issues, their religious beliefs, and even their illnesses. Now, since at least 2014, the Swedish fashion retailer, which is also Europe's second largest after Spain's Inditex, has recorded details about employees, and this is according to the Hamburg Commissioner for Data Protection and Freedom of Information in Germany. Essentially, this is where their German headquarters sit. Now, this includes extensive information on their staff when they had time off work, which included notes on their vacation details, medical symptoms, and diagnosis. Some supervisors also kept notes on employees' private lives that they heard through workplace conversations, including family issues and religious beliefs. Supervisors stored some of these details online, making them partly readable by up to 50 other managers. Again, this is according to the German investigation. Some of these notes were highly detailed, and supervisors updated them as other issues developed with these employees. This also had just a ton of information, because as well as evaluating work performance, the managers were also using this data to make decisions about their actual employment. The data collection only became public after essentially a configuration error in October of 2019 made this data accessible company-wide for several hours, meaning this was essentially data that H&M wasn't sharing to their general rank and file employees. A misconfiguration made it open, and the gloves came off. Now Germany is essentially going after them. I'm wondering if the GDPR as well. Moving on, excuse me, let's talk about Limerick University Hospital in Limerick, or in Ireland. So University Hospital Limerick is in the process of sending letters to more than 600 patients following an alleged major data breach concerning patient details, including 95 children, which have essentially had their information posted on social media. Now, Gandhi, which I believe is the Ireland, or Gardaí, which I believe is the Ireland's governing body for this, has been informed of the alleged breach by non-employees of this institution, and it is alleged that patient data, including names, dates of birth, as well as medicines dispensed, was extracted from computer systems relating to patients who attended or who were attended to at the emergency department at the University Hospital of Limerick last April. So heads up to you if you're in Ireland. In Limerick, I guess, using University Hospital Limerick, you may have been breached. Moving on, let's talk about Ardona, I believe I'm pronouncing that correctly. This is an insurance provider in the United Kingdom, because the Information Commissioner's Office, or ICO, is accessing information provided to it by Ardona after the broker was hit by a cyber attack last week. Now, the breach was announced by Ardona on the 30th of September, and the incident, and I quote, caused disruption across a limited part of the Ardona Group estate. And so here we are. So I'm not much sure about them, but they're apparently an insurance provider or broker. And if you have anything to do with them, heads up to you. Moving on, let's talk about Unity Health Toronto up in the Great White North of Canada. They say about 150 patients have been affected by a data breach in which their medical records were allegedly used in an extortion attempt involving a third-party provider. Here's what's going on. University Health Toronto said the incident involved a former employee with Nuance Communications, a company that transcribes clinical notes dictated by doctors at St. Michael's Hospital. I believe Nuance is the one that owns Dragon Naturally Speaking, if I recall correctly. The worker with Nuance Communications allegedly held on to patient records after leaving the company, according to Unity Health, and in March, the person allegedly attempted to use the records to get Nuance to pay him money. This is, again, according to the Health Network. So the records contain patient names, medical histories, diagnosis, treatments, and other information according to the network. It is noted that no financial or health insurance information was included. Nuance reported the matter to the police in India, where the alleged incident is believed to have taken place, as they basically outsourced this transcription to their employees in India. And Indian officers seized a computer believed to contain the patient information. So we'll see what happens. But heads up, if you use Unity Health Toronto, you may have actually been breached. Moving on. Let's talk about a company called Verimatrix, and they're out of Provence in France. They announced that they have been targeted by a sophisticated cyber attack that led to a data breach that was confirmed on October 9th. That is Friday of obviously this year. I don't know much more about it at this time, but obviously if you have anything to do with Verimatrix in Provence, heads up to you. Moving on, let's talk about community health systems, and this is actually an update on a 2014 data breach from about 6 years ago. They're also known as CHS, and now they are ordered to pay $5 million to 27 states who are party to this settlement. Now, CH owned, leased, or operated 206 affiliate hospitals when the breach occurred, including Oak Hill Clinic Group, Oak Hill Hospital Corp., Bluefield Clinic Company, Greenbrier Valley Anesthesia, Greenbrier Valley Emergency Physicians, and a whole bunch of others. Those are just out of West Virginia, but this is impacting 27 different states in that sense, because again, they have 206 affiliated hospitals. They are based out of Tennessee, And at the moment, they have control over 92 hospitals. And so this is obviously a big issue. Now, the states I know so far where their attorney generals are reporting they're going to get settlements are one, West Virginia, that will receive an allotment of $73,897, for the basically the patients of this system in their state. And New Jersey is getting $58,000, and they had 45,000 residents impacted. So I'm expecting essentially to talk about more as they disclose, as I have with other breaches. Moving on. Let's talk about Heartland Community College in the state of Illinois. The article I read on this doesn't actually specify what happened, only that a breach disrupted their systems and they're working on it. And so I don't know much more than that, but if you have anything to do with Heartland Community College, you may be disrupted or may have a data breach, but the article was absolutely horrible. Local news, what are you going to do? But here you are. So heads up, Heartland Community College, anything in the state of Illinois. Moving on, let's talk about Dr. Lal Path Labs. This is out of India. They leaked millions of patients' data online, and this data was left exposed on a public server for months without a password, and it was being hosted by Amazon, proving once again nobody knows how to configure an Amazon AWS S3 bucket. And if you do know how to, you might want to call them because they could use your help. Moving on, let's talk about the Mayo Clinic. Yes, the Mayo Clinic, one of the most sophisticated hospital systems on the planet, because a former Mayo Clinic employee inappropriately accessed the private health information for more than 1,600 patients. Now, Mayo Clinic said in a news release on Wednesday that on August 5th, it confirmed that a former Rochester employee accessed the health information of 1,614 patients, including 1,131 patients in Minnesota, where the Mayo Clinic is located. The news release said due to the number of patients impacted, the date of inappropriate access is detailed in individual notices that they sent out to these 1,600 plus individuals. Information that may have been accessed, though, in the breach reportedly included names, demographic information, dates of birth, medical record numbers, clinical notes, and images. The news release said access was, and I quote, limited in duration, and there isn't any evidence that the data was printed or retained by the former employee. And Mayo added that the payment information, including bank account numbers and social security numbers, were not accessed. So hopefully that's some consolation. But heads up to you, if you're a patient or were a patient at the Mayo Clinic, you may want to check in. That's an amazing hospital, but nobody is immune to data breaches. Rule number 3 of the laws of cybersecurity: humans trust even when they shouldn't. Moving on, let's talk about Software AG. They are massive and out of Germany because the Klopp ransomware gang hit the network of this enterprise software giant last Saturday, asking for a ransom of $23 million US after stealing employee information and company documents. Now, Software AG it basically is headquartered in Darmstadt, Germany, with more than 5,000 employees and operations in 70 countries. And essentially, their customer list includes everything from government to banking, transportation, insurance, retail. Companies like Airbus, Lufthansa, DHL, Telefonica, Credit Suisse, Continental are just an example of roughly the 70% of Fortune 1000 companies that actually use their products. This could be a massive breach that I see over and over and over as companies start disclosing Software AG data breaches. And to quote their disclosure, the IT infrastructure of Software AG is affected by a malware attack since the evening of 3 October 2020. While services to its customers, including its cloud-based services, remain unaffected, as a result, Software AG has shut down the internal systems in a controlled manner in accordance with the company's internal security regulations. So we'll see where this goes, but if this is anything like Blackbaud, you may hear me talking about this for months. Moving on, let's talk about Sam's Club. This is that basically the Costco, the massive Costco competitor here, at least in the United States. I believe they're in Canada and elsewhere. They are owned by Walmart. They are huge. In email sent out to Sam Club's members, the company is alerting their members that an unauthorized party may have actually gained access to their accounts. Now, this activity, which was detected by Sam's Club in September, did not stem from a data breach, according to them. It was likely the result of attackers already knowing user credentials. So, for example, credential stuffing, meaning you got breached in the dark web and you use the same dang, username and password as you did for another data breach when you log into your Sam's Club account, and attackers were basically able to access that. That's a huge problem. You should always have unique passwords and never ever use your work email for personal stuff, because that's just a liability to your company as well. Moving on, let's talk about the document signing service DocSketch. In an email sent to customers, the company said that an unauthorized party gained access to a copy of its database in early August of this year. I guess the whole database. That's kind of terrifying. Now, the database file contained a snapshot of the doc service dated July 9th of 2020, and to quote them, the database contained contact information and form fields related to documents filled out by users and users' recipients. And again, this is according to them. Now, they said that the intruders did not access the documents themselves, but they could read what information users filled inside the documents, such as names, signatures, personal data, and even payment card details if it was required in a document. The database also contained login information and user contacts, basically the person that asked you to fill in the document. So heads up, if you've used DocSketch in any way, shape, or form for business, I don't care what it is, you may be accessible, especially if you did it before July 9th of 2020. Now, moving on, let's talk about the IMO, or International Maritime Organization, which is actually part of the United Nations. Now, according to this agency, on September 30th, the IMO website and other web-based services were down due to technical issues, but on October 2nd, it revealed that it was a cyber attack. Now, the Secretariat shut down the key system to prevent further damage, and to quote their statement, the email system, including other internal and external collaboration platforms, are working as normal. The platform used for virtual meeting with simultaneous interpretation has been unaffected and continues to function. So here we go. Hopefully the IMO, the International Marine Organization from the UN, will be back on their feet. Moving on, let's talk about WisePay. They're a supplier of financial services for schools that essentially enables parents to pay for things like school meals, clubs, and trips, among many other things. I know they're used heavily in the UK. They are now recovering their service after they discovered a Magecart skimmer on their website was essentially stealing credit card information from at least earlier in October. Now, the firm said that the data on an undisclosed number of transactions basically affected approximately 300 schools, and it may have been stolen when users who thought they were making legitimate payments were redirected without their knowledge to a malicious external page, which was masquerading as WisePay's website. Basically, they clicked on a link, sent them somewhere else, and they gave the information to the Magecart group. Not cool. Heads up if you use WisePay for your children's schools. Moving on, let's talk about more schools here in the United States. The Fairfax County Public Schools in the Washington, D.C. area, because several hundred Fairfax County school employees' names and social security numbers are now floating around the dark web. Now, here's what's going on. In September, Maze, the ransomware group again, claimed to have stolen personal data from inside the school system's computer system, and on the dark web, Maze showed a link to download a handful of stolen documents, including letters from the school system to parents discussing disciplinary actions with their students. Basically, this is proof that they stole data. So, hey, no matter if you restore from backup school system, please come pay me. Now, the attackers claim to have a lot more and have threatened to release it unless they were paid a ransom. A couple of days later, those documents were pulled off the website, and basically, a cybersecurity expert that was familiar with this specific breach said that this basically happened when the organization begins ransomware negotiations with the criminal. And so here we are, Fairfax County Schools seems to be negotiating, but the attackers released more private information on Friday, and this time it's obviously a lot more dangerous by virtue of this. And then one of the newly leaked documents is a spreadsheet from 2014 listing several hundred employees' names, social security numbers, and details about their health insurance. So hopefully Fairfax County Public Schools will get this straightened out. And given the new laws here in the United States, if they pay that attacker, they may actually be in violation of law for essentially giving material support to an organization that may be in a country we're not allowed to do. So we'll see what happens there, but that's going to be a bit of a mess. Moving on, let's stick with school systems, and we'll talk about the Tyngsboro Public Schools. They are just northwest of Boston, and their schools were a target of a cyber attack that caused internet outages this past week at their high school and middle school, according to officials. And here's the kicker. This was a distributed denial of service attack, apparently from a device being brought into the building each morning, according to the forensic experts and the superintendent. Meaning, what high schooler decided it would be really fun to just knock out everything and bring in some kind of, let's say, Wi-Fi device that, you can make for pretty cheap with just parts off of Amazon, and started basically DDoSing the school system. I'm curious to know what that is. It could be a disgruntled teacher, maybe one of the IT people, but wow, that is something from the inside. You normally would think it's going to be elsewhere, but here we are. That's crazy. And finally, the last breach I want to talk about is not by far the biggest breach at all, but is potentially the most deadly. And I'm talking about AAA ambulance service in Hattiesburg, Mississippi. And I think you probably know where I'm going with this, because AAA ambulance service said in a statement that they had a breach that occurred on July 1st of this year, and that on August 26th, following their investigation, they actually were able to determine that personal information had been accessed or taken from AAA systems. Now, the data involved in this breach included first names, last names, combined with one or more of the following pieces of information: date of birth, social security, driver's license numbers, financial account numbers, diagnosis information, medical treatment information, patient account number, prescription information, medical record number, and or health insurance information. That is a very typical data breach, but here's the thing: AAA ambulance service in Hattiesburg, Mississippi is a first responder. And if the attackers were able to access this kind of information, it is very possible that they could have done other things like completely lock them out or bring their systems down for ransom, in which case the ambulance service in the area of Mississippi, at least one of them, wouldn't be running, which means some people may not actually be able to get an ambulance in time to get to a hospital, and that could cause lives. I think we all remember a few years ago the whole Bridgegate thing in New Jersey that former Governor Chris Christie was involved in, or at least accused of. I believe he was cleared of wrongdoing. Don't quote me on that. I don't remember, but I believe that was the case, where they shut a bridge down and an ambulance carrying a critically harmed person, whatever the diagnosis was, he or she was not able to make it because the bridge was closed, and died in the ambulance. This is a very similar issue, and we are in the middle of a pandemic, and we are talking about coronavirus and COVID-19. I don't care if there are 5 people working for this ambulance service. I have no idea the size of Hattiesburg, Mississippi, but this is a critical service in the middle of a pandemic. There are no honor among thieves. This is why things like the COVID-19 Cyber Threat Coalition exist, and this is why we continuously need awareness and cyber hygiene training for all of our employees. AAA ambulance service, I hope you get it straightened out. I hope your service was not interrupted, and I hope you have not missed a single pickup of somebody in any kind of critical condition as a result of this, because I think that's tantamount to murder, and that's a very serious problem, which is why it's the last thing. We're all in this together, the pandemic and everything else, and so make sure that you are maintaining this. And if the email looks too good to be true, or it looks too unusual, or something seems off, don't pick it up. Alert your cybersecurity staff or your IT or somebody knowledgeable that can look at that, check it, and test it. Otherwise, you guys are going to go out, and that may infect the community or impact the community in a way that shouldn't be, because this is possibly a matter of life or death. And so that is your breaches of the week. Were you affected? Let me know. And please like, share, follow me here on Facebook and Twitter at NickAESP. And please feel free to subscribe to me at YouTube as well. And as always, stay safe and stay online. Thanks, everyone.